Welcome to Pondering Passages. Today we're going to be taking a look at Psalm 4. It's a wonderful psalm about reputations and about the joy that God brings and about lying down in peace.
Welcome to Pondering Passages. I am Curt Austin, my good friend David Mullins.
Good to be here, Curt.
There he is.
Ya.
We have come together again. It's another good day to talk about the passage. Today we're talking about Psalm 4. What is that? Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. Cuatro.
Cuatro.
Cuatro. And so we are talking about the psalm.
Numero cuatro.
Talking about what might have stood out to us, what might have been really kind of resonated with our souls this week as we read it every day. And so I'm so glad that you have joined us for this conversation. Let's just start right off. We would love for you to be a part of the conversation. Feel free to leave comments. Feel free to give us your insights, to your frustrations with the passage or with Dave.
And we read every comment. I mean, it's not like it's hard.
No,
there's only a few. And most videos, there are none. So, and we appreciate that. You guys are thinking about our time, but, feel free to, what struck you, what maybe stood out to you, what didn't work, because sometimes that happens when we talk about these. So, but you mentioned before, we usually don't talk about the psalm at all. But the one thing you said is you really enjoyed this.
Really I did. I liked it. I wish I had, and let's be honest. I mean, sometimes we don't get a chance to read it every day, not because we don't want to be faithful to God, but this week I was ill for a couple of days, just took me out of commission. So I wish I had 7 good days to read this psalm because it was, I liked it. It was interesting because I thought it read somewhat like a proverb.
Okay.
And it was kind of a statements of this is what you do to, but let's dive into it. Let's talk about it.
Let's do that. Yeah. Well, let me not go too fast. This is for the choir director. It's a psalm of David to be accompanied by stringed instruments. We could have done that. We could have.
We're going to both get our guitars down right now.
We could have been playing as we're talking about this. Did not think about it until right now, but nevertheless, we'll continue on. Soldier on. This psalm is really about someone who has their reputation has been marred, I guess. Answer me when I call to you, O God, who declares me innocent. And I think that's an important line, that the psalmist is convinced that God has declared them innocent of whatever is going on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so he asks him, free him from his troubles. We'll learn what the troubles are. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer.
Yeah, I liked, and you get that accusations from verse 2, right? How long?
Yes.
Will you people ruin my reputation? This is actually, it's not just a prayer to God. It's actually a conversation, or at least venting. You know how sometimes he did this, or you did this to me. So it's kind of one of those kinds of conversations. How long will you people ruin my reputation? How long will you make groundless accusations? How long will you continue your lies? Interlude.
Yes. The thing is, in that culture, really your reputation, your honor was everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge deal. I think it still is. What's the term the kids use? Oh, they dissed me. I think that's what the cool kids are saying now. He dissed me.
I think they were saying that in the 90s, maybe. I'm not so sure 30 years later, it's still quite there.
But reputation's a big deal. People do a lot when they feel like their reputation has been hurt, because it's hard to recover. And sometimes it's things, that aren't true. And that's even harder because it's kind of hard to prove that you didn't do this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where this person finds themselves.
While I was laying on my sick bed, thinking that it could be my last day, I chose to watch Aaron Sorkin movies. And
well, doesn't everyone? I mean, that's
they should, to be honest. But is it the Gang of Seven, or what's that about the people, the anti-Vietnam protesters who all went to Washington D.C. or I mean to Chicago for the Democratic National Party. Yeah. And it was interesting because as you watch the film, all of these actually who are very famous people or have become famous throughout history, not just kids who, were protesting, but I mean, really strong protest leaders, ended up being kind of lumped together. And it was interesting to watch how Sorkin wrote this so that the different people who had their own approach to protesting cared so much about their reputation because they were lumped with someone else who had a either more studied approach, more comedic approach, more pacifist approach, and they were all kind of figuring out each other and how they stood in stand. It's interesting because they were all being judged by the same court, but they all their reputations were all at risk, and they tried to maintain their identity in the midst of this singular trial. And I think that's true for us as well, is that we enter into situations where we may be lumped in with a whole bunch of people, but we want to stand apart in some way, right? Somehow, our reputation matters.
It does, and it's very evident here. Because he's going to God and he's asking these folks, how long are you going to do this?
Yeah.
And I really like where verse 3 starts because he's talking to these folks that are lying and messing up his reputation. And he says, you can be sure of this. I love that. Such confidence. Yeah. You can be sure. You can take this to the bank.
That's the one. I was trying to think what it was. You could take this to the bank.
You could take it to the bank. The Lord set apart the godly for himself. The Lord will answer when I call. So it's almost like saying, so you're not just going against me, you're going against God.
Yeah.
And what he tells them is, don't sin by letting anger control you. Think about it overnight and remain silent.
You think he's telling them this?
Yes. Because of verse 5.
I think he's telling himself this.
I thought that for about 4 or 5 days.
And then you read a commentary, right?
Well, commentaries are helpful, but if you really look at the context, because of 5, he's really telling them, change, repent. Now I don't know what the anger is that they're responding to, but he's basically saying, don't let it control you. Don't do this. Find a different path, a better path, because the Lord sets the godly apart for himself, and the Lord will answer. So in response to that, this is to be their new path.
Interesting. Okay, that's really helpful. I can still read it either way, where if somebody, because I've been on this the receiving side of those people who want to, say something bad about you. I've been on that side, and it makes you angry. It makes you frustrated. It makes you focus in. You and I have been talking about this over the last few months as far as the inner voices that we allow to make decisions for us. And so I had that kind of going as my script on this, that I personally, I cannot let sin control me.
Right.
I need to think overnight about it. And when I go to God, rather than offering this sacrifice going, God, I'm so holy, they're such a mess. We're all in need. That's how I read it.
Yeah. And I like I said, I read it that way, at the beginning, but it always didn't connect. It just didn't. It seemed like there was something missing in that. However, one of the things we try to do here on Pondering Passages is look for the formative question. What is the passage asking of us? And so I do think it's fair to say, hey, this is God's message to me. I think it's the psalmist's message to those that were really dragging his reputation through the mud. But that doesn't mean that I can't take this and realize he's right. This is a much better pathway.
And also, now that you've brought up this point, because one of the struggling points for me was comparing verse 4, where he's saying, don't let anger control you. Think about it overnight and remain silent. And verse 8.
Yes. See, that's the other thing.
So that's, I appreciate that. So in verse 8, in peace, I lie down and sleep.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
That really helps, because I've got both of those two verses circled in my Bible to kind of, I wanted to talk about those today. How do they align? Thank you. You helped bring that into place.
And that's really why I landed where I did on verses 4 and 5, because of 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
Because without that, I mean, it's like, okay, where did that come from? Why are you saying this?
Yes.
Yeah, we have another visitor. Look at that.
This is my little Louis. Louis used to be little. When we got him, he was about 4 pounds. I think he's about 17 now. Most of that's hair. Oh, here he is.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
He doesn't show up very well on the camera.
No, he doesn't.
He's all black.
Yeah. So, so basically the flow that I landed on was, these folks are really messing up his reputation. And he says, you can be sure of this, God is set aside the godly for himself. So you guys better shape up, don't let this anger, think about it, do right sacrifices. And then he comes to verse 6. Many people will say, who will show us better times? Guess who? It'll be God. And I love the phrase, let your face smile upon us, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of life? Here's a formative question for myself. What kind of life does God smile upon? And what does it mean for me to live a life that God's face smiles upon me? And I think that's what he's calling them to. And really 7 and 8 is he's reflecting on what God has done in his life. So these folks are making these accusations, these lies, messing up your reputation. But then he looks kind of beyond that and says, you have given me greater joy than those who have abundance of harvest and grain and new wine.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Like I say, even though I didn't really have the same approach to this, and I do appreciate this new way of looking at this passage, which makes me like it even more.
Yeah.
I guess why I was thinking in proverbial is number 4, verses 4 and 5, right? I mean, it's kind of, don't sin by letting anger control you. That seems like a proverb,
Yeah.
Think about it overnight, remain silent, proverbial.
And Paul says something similar, in Ephesians, don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil a foothold.
Yeah.
So it's right in line.
Well, the passage, there's nothing new under the sun. The reality is that this is age-old wisdom.
Yeah. It's still true today.
And so what's the point? We cannot navel gaze. We cannot spiral into our own views of what's happening, which, he starts with that. God, he starts right off by saying, God, answer me when I call to you. I'm looking to you for that assistance. I'm looking to you for that help. And then he challenges those people who are giving him a hard time.
Yeah. And I think, when I read verses 7 and 8, it's almost like he's come to maybe a place of peace or resolution that,
nice.
Regardless of what they say about me, God has given me greater joy than anything I could ever receive. So in peace, I will lie down and sleep. For you, O Lord, will keep me safe. And because of verse 8, I read that a lot of folks use this as an evening psalm, at least that verse.
Sure.
Can you imagine praying this every night as you're going to bed? In peace, I will lie down and sleep. And if you don't have that peace when you're lying down, the question is, what is going on that I've lost that peace, and how can I cultivate that peace once again?
Yeah.
And I think the psalmist gives you that way, that it's about making right sacrifices. It's about doing the right thing. It's about recognizing that God is your confidence.
Yeah, I love it. This, and I'll be honest, I struggled with chapters or Psalm 2 and 3. It was like, this is a weird turn, and it's like this came back to a song that I would like to sing.
Yes.
You know,
well, stringed instruments, that's kind of what the psalmist is saying. So
I got to pull it off the wall and write. You know, my brother for a long time, he was writing, or he was playing his guitar every day. We've talked about, you and I personally have talked about the practice, daily practice of
daily
whatever
practice.
it is, you
Makes
get better.
Difference.
And Todd, when we were in college, he was playing playing his guitar every day for like an hour. He got really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really good, and he was writing music because that's where his brain went. And he was starting to write some music around the Psalms. He would take a psalm and he would write about it. Psalm 31 was one that he did. Just a beautiful song. Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings. I'll never forget it. It was beautiful.
Wow.
So I think that's my next calling, Dave, and I'll do it for every single psalm, because Dave loves it when I promise to do every day or every psalm. He thinks that that's really ambitious.
Yeah. Not for you though. Not for you. for mere mortals like me, that's ambitious. But for you, you got this.
Well, let's see. We're in March, and I promised on January 1st to write every day, write a blog post every day. And let's see, we're in April. It's April 1st today.
Oh, it is.
Yes, it is.
No fooling.
I'm not kidding, man. It is April 1st.
And I've what have I believed today so far that isn't true? Oh. So
anyway,
it's been great being here and talking through this psalm. It's a great psalm, beautiful psalm, and one that I think asks some very poignant, formative questions of us on how we're going to be in this world, even when people, say things against us.
I'm just trying to think, Dave, for a minute. This proves that we really don't talk about these before we get on, but I'm just trying to think for a minute. If there was one, I mean, let's leave our viewer with one takeaway, one challenge. I mean, you've kind of laid that out there, but let's drive it even a little deeper, a little more to home. How does Psalm 4, is it verse 8? Is it verse 8 that is a place where you're going to live moving forward, or I'm going to, I honestly, for me, verse 5 is the one where I really felt God was speaking to me this week.
Okay.
I really did. And not because I'm out there slaughtering goats and sheep. It's because I really felt like sometimes I go to church, or I am attending a small group, or I am even on the Friday morning sometimes when we're doing this. Is my spirit right? Am I doing it for the right reason? Am I? God help me understand. I really, this week as I read this, and I've got a lot of writing in my Bible, but verse 5 is also circled, and that was for me. Offer sacrifices in the right spirit, and trust the Lord.
Yeah, and I would say another one that jumped out at me was 7, to recognize that what God gives us is greater than anything else. I mean, anything we could receive. Of course, abundance of harvest and grain was a huge deal in their culture. New wine, a huge deal. And he said, the joy that God has given him is greater than those that have these things. And I think, as we look out and see the excesses of our culture, it's easy to get swept away, but take a step back and realize that what God gives is much, much greater joy than any of that. So I guess the challenge would be find your own place in this passage.
Yeah.
What place is God calling you to, and live into that?
Yeah, I like that.
Well, it's been great being with you, Curt. I think people can go to ponderingpassages.com. If you have problems finding the URL, actually, I should just point straight down.
You just point straight down. I'll point on the little corner of my screen here.
Yeah, and I'll point over to you then. So, people don't realize how hard this is.
Oh my gosh! You would think it's just automatic, and it's not.
Yeah. If
that's the kind of talent we bring to this. I'm not doing that again.
All right. Well, it was great having you guys here. Again, do comments. We would love to read some comments, and I pray that your day is blessed. Go to ponderingpassages.com. We're on Facebook and YouTube and stuff, but you can find all the stuff that we're doing on ponderingpassages.com.
All the time. We'll see you next week.
Oh, come on. Do it.
Oh, that is hard. That is so hard.
It is. Why's your hand so little? You got like tiny hands.
Because I'm not up here.